Hello Cancer, Dadhichi here with the March 2018 horoscope update. Take a look at the chart and you'll see some significant events and patterns taking place through this period of your life. I'm not going to harp on the Saturn-Pluto in your 7th house of relationships more than I need to, except to say that the placement of Mars here moving into this area on March 18th is going to really trigger the whole relationship component of your life. Now that's not an easy one, but let's not jump the gun. Let me show you in particular the importance of your communication, especially around the 2nd, when we have that perfect opposition to the Sun. That's obviously a full moon, but it's opposing these 3 other planets in the 9th house. 3rd house is your communication, it's your negotiation skills, it's travel. In your case, it's the sign of Gemini, which has a lot to do with critique. Here we see the really nice aspect to the 7th house Saturn. So the relationships are under the microscope. This is a cordial sort of well executed discussion, as shown by the trine aspect here. But what we see as the moon swings around here over the coming days, there's one there shortly after, the square aspect, opposition to Venus, which is the planet of love. Here we see the moon moving into square aspect of Saturn. These are on these days, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, still bringing with it that tension. Now that's relaxed for a few days and may even improve while moon comes into the conjunction of Jupiter here after the 7th. Well, leading up to the 7th anyhow. But it's these aspects that I'm most interested in when the moon makes contact with Mars. And I jumped the gun earlier saying the 18th, but here even a week or so earlier, around the 10th, we see the contact with Mars. Then the moon moves into the marital area, bringing with it that hot-headed energy, that frustrating energy here, 12th, 13th, and these are all of the square aspects, again further challenges from these planets that have a little bit earlier, Mercury and Venus, moved into your 10th house of profession. This is significant, and although I'm starting the month off on a bit of a bad note there for you, Cancer, the fact is that your work looks set to really take off against that juxtaposition of, you know, the troublesome Saturn, Pluto, and then later on the 18th, which is just about now, Mars moving into this critical area. It's going to stay there for a while, and maybe the way you're going to deal with that is through all this work energy. Take a look here, and I did actually overlook in my zealous interpretation of Mars moving here that exactly on that same day a new moon. Now this is interesting and maybe a little bit difficult to interpret because the 9th house is not necessarily always, well, it's got really, according to astrology, not much to do with your relationships. But let's think this through. Let's leave aside the relationship and talk about your philosophical and life ideals. This definitely has a lot to do with it, especially when we see these contacts here from the moon moving through this 9th house, these right angles that are forming between Mars here in the marital sector and this 9th house stuff. But the 9th house, it does have a lot to do with your relationships. It's got everything to do with, you know, how compatible you are with a person in terms of their life philosophy. So it may not be the nitty-gritty of your day-to-day activities, but it may actually have a lot more to do with this vastly more important component of how well we get on with people, which is the spiritual and philosophical aspects. So that's something that I think is going to come to the fore, and have you asking those serious questions of, well, look, am I well suited? What's this gap between what I believe, what my partner believes, what I believe, and my social group generally believe? Because that is definitely something that's going to have to be addressed. Mars here is not as quick moving as some of these other planets either, so it's going to remain here. And have a look at this really, I call it an unsavoury aspect of Mars and Saturn when they come into conjunction, because they stir things up, they create a lot of frustration. If you're not able to speak about how you feel, you're going to just bottle all of that energy up, and it's going to be a very devitalising emotional vibration that you have to deal with. Still, you've got this strong, powerful, exalted Sun up here in the 10th house. Great opportunity to create new workplace agreements, to increase your income through new work, new positions, and also a better relationship with those you work with overall. In particular, your employer. Finances are well supported after the 27th. Look at this, the triangular aspect, with what Western astrologers consider a lucky conjunction to the North Node. Towards the end of the month, we see a return back to the communication. That's going to soften the energy of this devitalizing Mars and Saturn. And in the very last day or so of the month, we see the contact of the Moon to the domestic sphere. Again, that's a hard aspect there, and one which will find you balancing your emotional needs with those of your partner and also those in your workplace. Notice also, just on the 31st, the position of Venus sneaking into the 11th house. That we have to get to early next month, when I hopefully will see you here again, because now that brings to a conclusion the aspects. But this T-squared does show you have some wheeling and dealing on an emotional level to work through these conflicting and divided loyalties at the very, very tail end of the month. Take another look at a different perspective from what I've written and we've provided in terms of the monthly textual format, and also the year in focus, which you can look at there at the website astrology.com.au. Till next month, take care. Thanks for joining me again. Bye-bye.